To me, a great RPG isn't just a grind or a quest log. It's the kind of game that sticks with you years later, where the story, the battles, and the characters refuse to fade. And if I can't remember any of that, it's just another cartridge on the shelf. But the 15 Super Nintendo RPGs you're about to see? They cut straight to the best. The timeless ones worth playing all over again in 2025. Terranigma doesn't exactly start with saving the princess. It starts with you reviving continents. Yeah, no pressure. You play as Ark, a troublemaker from a tiny village, who ends up carrying the weight of literally bringing the world back to life. First it's land masses, then plants and animals, and eventually full-blown civilizations. The pacing hits hard early on, each chapter pushing the scope further until you're basically watching human history speedrun in front of you. Combat feels surprisingly fluid for a 16-bit action RPG. Ark's moveset changes based on context. Sprint into a slash, leap attack, spin strike, or even a sliding stab. It's snappy, responsive, and way more versatile than most Super Nintendo peers. Boss fights take advantage of this, forcing you to swap between techniques instead of button mashing your way through. The magic system is the oddball here. You don't have MP, you stockpile rings powered by rare Magirocks. It's flexible and can melt tough fights, but it's very underexplained. But what really makes Terranigma stand out is how the world itself evolves. Cities don't just sit there. They grow with elections, inventors, new shops, even a quest line where technology advances from cameras to airplanes. Side quests directly tie into the theme of progress, making your journey feel less like a checklist and more like guiding civilization itself. The story also swings darker than you'd expect from a Super Nintendo title. It digs into sacrifice, identity, and the cost of advancement without holding your hand. Even decades later, players still talk about the emotional gut punches. And because it never released in North America and never got a modern port, the game carries this lost legend status. Bahamut Lagoon hands you a dragon, tosses you into a war in the sky, and basically says, "Good luck, don't screw it up." And honestly, that's what makes it brilliant. On the surface, it's a tactical RPG in the Fire Emblem mold, with squads of 4 moving across a grid. But the second combat starts, the whole thing flips into turn-based battles, almost like a traditional JRPG hiding inside a strategy shell. The twist? Every squad is paired with a dragon. These beasts don't follow direct orders, they run on AI, reacting with only the vaguest of commands like go, come, or wait. Sometimes they'll vaporize half the map for you, other times they'll throw themselves headfirst into danger. But what keeps the game fresh is how dragons evolve. You don't just grind levels, you feed them. Weapons, armor, spellbooks, even random junk. Each bite changes their stats, their look, their elemental affinity, and even their behavior. Train them right and they become absolute monsters. But mess it up, and you might be stuck with a reckless fire hazard that burns down your own allies. Then there's the terrain system. Fire actually burns forests, ice freezes water into solid ground, lightning reduces buildings to rubble, and healing spells literally purify swamps. It's not just flashy effects, it completely changes the tactics of every battle. Add in character formations that amplify each other's abilities, and suddenly every move feels like it has weight. The story doesn't just sit quietly in the background either. Bu and his rebellion start off as classic fantasy, but the plot quickly digs into betrayal, love, and the brutal cost of war. Star Ocean on the Super Nintendo doesn't exactly scream space epic when you boot it up, as most of your time is actually stuck on a medieval planet swinging swords, not flying starships. But here's the thing. What Tri-Ace pulled off here in 1996 feels like a whole generation ahead of its peers. Combat ditched the turn-based grid and threw you into real-time brawls where you directly control one character while the rest follow tactics you set. It's chaotic, sure, but hitting that menu wheel mid-battle to fire off a spell or heal adds just enough strategy to keep it from being pure button mash. And if the AI sometimes acts like it's had one too many, that just means more room for you to carry the fight. Outside of battles, the game hides some of the most ambitious systems on the SNES. You don't just level up, you unlock talents, master specialties, and dive into item creation. Cooking, crafting, alchemy, you name it. Play it smart and you'll break the game wide open. Crafting weapons so busted, they make bosses look like practice dummies. And if you like replay value, Star Ocean practically begs for it. Private actions in towns let you dig into character relationships, tweak affinity points, and open paths to multiple endings. Not everyone can be recruited in one run, so you're always missing something by design. And let's not skip the technical wizardry. 48 megabits, the SDD1 chip, voice samples, this thing pushed the Super Famicom harder than almost any other RPG. And for players in '96, it felt like peeking into the future of the genre. Breath of Fire 2 doesn't waste time pretending it's lighthearted. Cute cast, colorful world, and then, bam! The church might be the scariest part of the entire game. Capcom took a pretty standard 16-bit formula and twisted it with darker themes, bigger ideas, and systems that went way beyond hit attack, heal, repeat. The story drops you into Ryu's journey, but what hooks people isn't just him, it's the crew. You've got a tiger girl gladiator, a giant armadillo healer, a snooty frog prince, and even a plant thing that may or may not freak you out. Each of them ties into the bigger theme of trust, corruption, and what happens when faith is used as a weapon. By the time you hit the infamous Ivrai arc, you realize this game isn't pulling punches. Mechanically, it's stacked. The Shaman Fusion system lets you merge characters with elemental spirits, changing their look, stats, and sometimes unlocking absurdly strong abilities. Then there's Township, your personal city that you literally build from scratch. You pick the carpenter, recruit NPCs, and watch as it transforms into a hub full of shops and secrets. Add side systems like fishing and item crafting, and suddenly you're knee-deep in distractions that actually pay off in gameplay. Combat still follows the JRPG turn-based template, but with layers. Formation bonuses, multiple dragon spells for Ryu, and the legendary chance to duel Barabari, one of the most memorable villains on the SNES. And that fight alone has scarred entire generations of players. Sure, the original English localization was so rough it felt like it came through a blender, but the game's identity shines through. It's ambitious, it's weirdly bold for its era, and it delivers moments that stick in your head long after the credits roll. Paladin's Quest looks like just another early Super Nintendo RPG, and then it smacks you with the rulebook from another planet. Want to cast fire? Sure, just slice your own HP bar and hope you packed enough healing bottles. Yeah. Magic literally bleeds you out, and that one twist sets the tone for the entire adventure. You play as Chesney, a clueless student who accidentally wakes up Dalgren, a planet-killing weapon, and now has to fix the mess before the dictator Zagos grabs it for himself. The world feels alien, with sci-fi vibes, strange cities, bizarre life forms, and it doesn't look or play like the safe fantasy RPGs of the same era. Combat runs in first person and uses 8 elemental spirits. Buy one, and you unlock spells tied to it. Combine 2, and suddenly you've got a different attack entirely. The mix and match system is deep. And when you remember that every spell drains HP, it turns into this constant push and pull. Do I risk blasting the enemy now, or save the health for whatever's waiting 2 rooms ahead? Healing, by the way, doesn't come from endless spells, it's locked to bottles. Each bottle has a fixed number of charges and you have to refill them in towns. Simple? Yes. Stressful when you're deep in a dungeon and that last charge is gone? Also yes. And then there are mercenaries. 2 extra slots in your party filled by temporary hires, each bringing unique abilities, sometimes a lifesaver, sometimes a liability. And some don't even come with healing gear, which feels like the game trolling you on purpose. Paladin's Quest isn't polished, it's not fast, and it definitely doesn't hold your hand. But it's one of the few SNES RPGs that dares to break the formula. And for players chasing something different, that gamble pays off. Lufia 2 looks like your typical turn-based grind fest, until you step into a cave and realize it's basically Zelda in disguise. Every dungeon throws puzzles at you, like push blocks, flip switches, fire arrows, blow open walls, and the kicker is that enemies actually move only when you move. You can even stun them with your tools to dodge fights completely, which feels way ahead of its time. Then the battles kick in. On the surface, standard turn-based combat, but the IP system changes everything. Take a hit, your IP gauge fills, and suddenly your sword or armor spits out a hidden special move, anything from a beefy 3x strike to a party heal. It means you're constantly juggling gear, not just for stats, but for the sneaky skills tied to them. Add in capsule monsters, which are little AI companions you evolve by feeding them loot, and the whole thing has this mix of unpredictability and depth that keeps fights from going stale. And if the main story about Maxim and the rise of the Sinistrals wasn't enough, the game hides a 99-floor roguelike dungeon, the Ancient Cave. You start at level 1, stripped of your items, and praying for Providence scrolls to escape alive with your treasures. It's optional, but for a lot of players it's the real addiction loop. Some even argue the Ancient Cave alone could have been its own game. Lufia 2 isn't just another JRPG checklist title, it's the one that decided dungeons should be brain teasers, combat should reward smart gear choices, and side content should eat your entire weekend. Live Alive looks like just another forgotten 90s RPG until it slaps you with a samurai stealth mission, a kung fu training montage, and a chapter where cavemen sniff out enemies because words don't exist yet. Square basically said, what if every genre jammed into one cartridge? Well, it works. The whole game is broken into short stories, each set in a different time period. 1 minute you're sneaking through Edo-era Japan, deciding whether to ghost your enemies or massacre the entire castle. The next you're in the present day fighting 1 versus 1, like it's a JRPG version of Street Fighter, literally stealing moves from your opponents. Then there's the Wild West, where you set traps before a showdown, a sci-fi future with almost no combat, and a near-future anime send-up with psychic powers and giant mechs. Each chapter lasts just a few hours, so it never drags. And once you've cleared them all, the game throws you into a finale that ties everything together. Combat runs on a 7x7 grid that mixes tactics with accessibility. You're moving around, lining up area hits, exploiting weaknesses, and watching enemies that take up multiple tiles to figure out the best angle to strike. In the Super Nintendo version, it was trial and error, while the modern remake cleaned it up by showing turn order, HP, and resistances so fights feel sharper. Reviewers often point out how short and snappy it is compared to the 60-plus hour monsters of the era. Hey guys, do me a solid and smash the hype button. Then drop a comment with your favorite pick for the next part of this series. I check and reply to all of them. They both feed the almighty algorithm and push this channel forward, and honestly, it's hands down the best way you can help the channel grow. And of course, if you're enjoying the video, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button so you won't miss the next one. Most JRPGs ask you to save a kingdom, but Romancing Saga 2 asks you to be the kingdom for hundreds of years. No big deal. Instead of one protagonist, you're guiding an entire dynasty, passing the crown down through generations as you slowly push back the 7 heroes. And every abdication isn't just story flavor, it's strategy. Techniques and knowledge pass on, shaping the future rulers you'll control. The game throws you into its infamous free scenario system. Quests and regions don't follow a neat checklist. You decide which territories to conquer, which crises to solve, and in what order. And every choice actually matters, so annexing lands fuels your empire, boosts Avalon's economy, and unlocks things like new weapons, schools of magic, or even fresh classes in your capital. Combat is where the Saga DNA really shows. Battles hinge on formations, positioning, and that glorious glimmer mechanic where new techniques just spark mid-fight if the stars align. Add in LP, where losing all life points means a character is gone for good, and suddenly every big fight feels high stakes. Grinding for safety? Forget it. Enemies scale with your battles, so farming makes the world meaner. It's the kind of system that laughs at traditional JRPG habits and dares you to adapt. But what keeps pulling players back is the freedom. Experiment with builds, fuse magic schools for devastating combos, and watch Avalon evolve with every decision. So here's a Square RPG you've probably never touched, because they decided to keep it locked in Japan. Nice move, right? Rudra no Hiho, or Treasure of the Rudras, dropped in 1996, literally at the tail end of the Super Famicom's life. And it's basically Square saying, what if we blow up the world every 4,000 years and give you 15 days to stop it? The hook is wild. 3 separate storylines, Cyan, Riza, and Serlant, that you can jump between at will with events that bleed into each other. One party leaves something behind and another might pick it up later. And when you clear them all, a 4th path unlocks to wrap everything up. It's a narrative setup that feels way ahead of its time, almost like a JRPG anthology converging into a single climax. But the real showstopper is the mantra system. Forget the usual Fire 1, Fire 2, Fire 3. Here, you literally type out words to invent spells. Prefixes, roots, suffixes, mix them, and suddenly you've got a custom arsenal. Want to steal a boss's move? Copy their mantra and toss it back at them. It's half battle system, half linguistics puzzle, and once you get the hang of it, you can break the game wide open. Combat itself runs on a slick turn-based setup, with big chunky animations that show off just how far the Super Nintendo had come by '96. Dungeons lean heavy on exploration and throw a high encounter rate at you. But that constant pressure also makes cracking new mantras feel like a reward loop instead of busy work. Clocking in around 40+ hours, it's one of those hidden Square experiments that didn't get the spotlight of Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VI, but easily deserves a spot in the same conversation, especially if you want a late-era 16-bit RPG that actually dares to do something different. Ogre Battle isn't the kind of Super Nintendo RPG that politely walks you through a prologue. Nope, it basically drops an entire rebellion on your lap and tells you to figure it out. And honestly, that's the charm. You're not just guiding a single hero here, you're commanding whole squads across massive maps, liberating towns and pushing back enemy lines. Every unit you deploy has its own class, alignment, and charisma, and those stats decide what roles they'll grow into. Paladins, witches, knights, vampires. The roster is insane, and building squads that actually complement each other is half the game. Battles play out automatically once your units clash, which sounds hands-off, but the real tension comes from your prep. Who's in front, who's in the back, which formation you picked, and whether you were smart enough to bring a healer instead of 5 berserkers. Then there are the tarot cards. Every time you liberate a city, you draw one, and they can nuke enemies, buff allies, or flip the tide of a fight at the perfect moment. It feels like you're carrying a pocket deck of cheat codes, but when you burn the wrong card at the wrong time, you'll regret it instantly. But what really sets Ogre Battle apart is how your choices ripple through the campaign. Kill enemies way below your level? Your alignment drops. Make shady decisions? Your reputation sinks. That reputation, or the chaos frame in later games of the series, actually decides which characters will join you, which secrets you'll see, and which ending you get. Day and night cycles even affect which units thrive on the battlefield. It's layered, demanding, and yeah, sometimes a little unforgiving, but it's one of the few Super Nintendo RPGs where strategy and morality intertwine so tightly that every playthrough feels different. Oh sure, Dragon Quest VI, the game that thinks it's totally fine to make you wait hours before handing over its best toy. But once it finally does, it's like a kid's birthday where the present is an entire armory. At first glance, it's old-school turn-based combat, clean and reliable, the kind of system that just works without ever breaking a sweat. But the real kicker is the vocation system. Halfway in, the game basically opened the doors and says, go nuts. Every character can swap jobs, master abilities, and carry skills across classes. Want a mage who throws fireballs but also suplexes trolls? Done. Stick with it long enough, and you're crafting hybrids that snowball into the ultimate hero class. And the worlds are massive. You're not just wandering one overworld, you're bouncing between the real world and the dream world, each packed with secrets and side quests. Vehicles range from the classic ship to a flying bed. Yes, a literal magic bed soaring across the map. It's silly and awesome at the same time, perfectly in line with Dragon Quest's charm. But it's in the exploration where the game flexes its scale. Entire continents, hidden dungeons, optional bosses. This thing is stacked. The double world structure constantly teases that what I do here might unlock something over there. And that back and forth never stops paying off. Yeah, it makes you crawl a bit at the start before the job system hits, but once it does, Dragon Quest VI transforms into a playground of customization and discovery. Front Mission looks like your typical tactical RPG until you realize every unit is a giant walking fridge stuffed with missiles and machine guns. And the game doesn't just let you blow things up. It makes you rip arms, legs, and torsos off piece by piece, and that's the hook. Break an enemy's arm and suddenly they're basically useless. Smash their legs. And now they crawl across the battlefield like a sad metal turtle. The campaign drops you into Huffman Island with Royd Clive, who's out for revenge after his fiancée is killed in a Wanzer skirmish. It's a straight military drama, with espionage, conspiracies, and factions fighting for control. But the real star isn't the plot, it's how much time you'll spend tinkering in the garage. Every mech is customizable. Body frames, arms, shoulder weapons, backpacks, and computers. Combat also feels different from anything else on the Super Nintendo. You've got weapon classes. Short-range machine guns that spray bullets all over, rifles that hit like a truck if they connect, and missile launchers that can't be countered but run out fast. On top of that, pilots unlock skills as they specialize, so suddenly your random spray becomes a guaranteed stun, or a double attack that flips the fight instantly. And when money gets tight, there's an arena where you gamble your mech builds against AI opponents for cash. It's basically the side hustle that keeps your squad alive. Mystic Arc is that kind of game where you wake up in a temple surrounded by creepy little figurines and think, yeah, this looks totally safe. From there, things only get stranger. You pick your main character, Ramir or Ferris, and dive into a hub-based adventure where each world is its own bizarre story arc. One minute, you're solving puzzles in a twisted carnival. The next, you're knee-deep in a kingdom run by animals. It feels less like one long JRPG and more like flipping through a collection of dark fantasy short stories. However, the real hook is the figurine system. Early on, you grab the Arc of Power, and suddenly those lifeless dolls in the sanctuary become your party members. You've got 6 allies to pick from, each wildly different. Lux is a walking tank who nukes enemies with atomic strikes. Reshine and Tokyo buff the party with Warcry, and Miriene specializes in magic. The beauty is that you can swap them in and out without much punishment, and even the benched characters still gain experience. It's a flexible system that makes you actually think about party composition, instead of just sticking with one setup forever. Combat itself plays out like a classic turn-based JRPG, but what sets Mystic Arc apart is how often it breaks the formula. Entire sections lean more on puzzles and exploration than grinding, forcing you to pay attention to the world instead of just the encounter rate. And when the game decides to turn up the heat though, it doesn't hold back. Random mobs can and will wreck you if you're careless, which adds a nice edge to the otherwise quirky vibe. Now let's talk about the most beautiful RPG on the Super Nintendo, and easily one of its most impressive, Tales of Phantasia. You jump into fights on a 2D line, sliding left and right, chaining sword skills in real time, while your party casts spells and throws support from the back. It's the birth of the linear motion battle system, the DNA of every Tales game that came after. It's scrappy, sometimes stiff, but the freedom to actually move and combo instead of waiting your turn, that was a revelation. And yeah, the AI allies don't always feel like geniuses, but setting their tactics, swapping in summons, and cooking up a strategy mid-fight kept things spicy. Outside Battle, it's a classic 90s RPG with a twist. You've got towns to visit, dungeons to puzzle through, contracts with elemental spirits to unlock, and a food sack to keep yourself patched up between encounters. It's a full package of systems that would later become series staples. The story swings hard into JRPG time travel melodrama. Heroes chasing a villain named Daos across eras, mixing lighthearted banter with some heavy beats. It's not subtle, but it's got charm, especially with a party that actually feels like a crew, not just random bodies following the hero. Play it today, and you're not just running through another retro RPG, you're seeing where one of the longest-running action RPG series first found its voice. Final Fantasy V isn't the one people brag about at parties. It's the one quietly sitting in the corner, flexing a job system so broken it makes every other RPG jealous. The whole hook is freedom. You've got over 20 jobs, each with skills you can master and drag over to another class. Want a samurai that dual-wields knives while tossing gil like confetti? Sure. A ranger that rapid-fires elemental sword skills? Go wild. The beauty is in experimenting until you stumble onto a combo that feels illegal, then watching bosses melt because you figured out the right blend. And the game pushes you to actually do it. Some fights straight up punish lazy setups, forcing you to swap classes and rethink your team. Then there's the infamous optional bosses, Omega and Shinryu, who exist solely to check if you really mastered the system. Spoiler, you probably didn't, but trying is half the fun. Now, about the story? Simple, lighthearted, and with a few gut punches. But Galuf's arc hits harder than expected, and Gilgamesh steals every scene with his over-the-top antics. It's not trying to outdo Final Fantasy IV in drama. It's more about keeping you smiling while you experiment with builds. And here's the kicker. Decades later, the community still runs the 4-job fiesta, a challenge where players beat the entire game locked into 4 random classes. The fact that this is even possible tells you everything about how flexible the design is. If you're still with me, the link to the playlist is popping up in the card right now. And before you go, don't forget to smash the hype button, leave a comment, and hit sub so you don't miss what's next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the comments section.